Hi everyone, it's Nahal here, and I'm going to go through the initial bit of our development tutorial. So what I'm going to go through is getting our Unity program ready, getting our 3D model inside our program, and then after we have our model, we are going to add speech and facial expression capabilities to it. So first thing for our getting started checklist, basically, if you haven't already downloaded Unity and you want to follow along, just go ahead to this link over here, Unity Archives, and download Unity version 2019.2.13. It should be somewhere in here in this list. And then afterward, I already have that version. So as you can see, this window pops up, and then I'm going to create a new project. And I'm going to call it, it's a 3D project. I'm going to call it IEEEVR tutorial 2020. Okay, so now that we have Unity up, in the projects tab here in the assets folder, we have a scenes folder. So we're going to open the scenes folder, and then there's a sample scene. So we're just gonna, it will be the same, but we're just going to create a scene just for an example. So same process, right click, create scene. We're going to call it scene 0. And if you go to scene 0, you see, same as before, it's another empty scene basically. Well, all it has is the main camera set at 0, 1, minus 10. We're going to set it to 0, 0, 0 for now. And then when I clicked on the main camera in the hierarchy tab, in the inspector view, it showed me a bunch of components for the main camera. Basically, it's transform and its camera features. So I just changed its position in the transform section. And then another thing that we have is our default directional light. So what we need now that we have our own scene 0, what we're going to do is go to the assets folder, go back to the assets folder again, and now we want to import our 3D model. So what we're going to do is create a folder for our 3D model. So again, right click, create folder. We're going to call it 3D model. And then to get a 3D model, there are a bunch of websites, obviously, that you can get any kind of 3D model that you want. Adobe Mixamo and Unity Asset Store have a bunch of models. Adobe Mixamo has many diverse and free models, so we're going to get our model from Adobe Mixamo. Okay, so in the Mixamo webpage, we're going to use the Remy model because I mean, you can use any other model that you want, but the Remy model has the blend shapes that we need to control Remy's facial expressions. So we're going to use the Remy model over here. And right now we don't need to add any animations to it, but later on Austin will explain how to download animations. And then you can see over here, so we were in the characters tab, and then if you want to download animations later, you just have to go to the animations tab. So we're just going to download this model. Unity will import our model in a bit. Okay. So now we have the Remy T-pose model, and what I'm going to do is that, as you can see, it's over here and it looks kind of weird. I'm going to drag and drop this model to my scene, and then in the scene hierarchy, when I click on it, let's just change the name and call it Remy alone. And then in this inspector view, I'm gonna put it positions at 0, 0, 0. And then I'm gonna move the camera. So I'm gonna put Remy at 0, 0, turn Remy 180 degrees, and then move the camera away so we can see Remy. And as you can see, it looks kind of weird. The reason it looks like this right now is that it doesn't have any material. So we need to make a few changes to Remy's initial model. So if you go back to the project view over here, assets folder, 3D models folder, if you click on Remy, you see in the inspector view that a bunch of options that we have: rig, animation, materials. First thing is that because we want to use inverse kinematics at some point for Remy to look at the user or the camera, we need to change the animation type over here to humanoid. And then whatever change you make, just make sure you click apply. After we change the model's rig to be humanoid, then we're going to go ahead to the materials tab to the location tab over here. And from use embedded materials, we're going to change it to use external materials legacy in parentheses, and then click apply. So what you're going to see right now is, at least on your computers, but if you're not following along in Unity, you can see it in the slides that a window will appear, and the header of the window is normal map settings, and you just have to click fix now for the materials to be fixed when they're imported. Okay, but when we look at Remy again, he still looks kind of scary. What we need to do, the reason for this is that some of the material, some of Remy's material is transparent. That's why he looks kind of strange. So what we're going to do at this point is, as you can see, if in the project view, if you click on Remy, you see that if you click on Remy and click on this sign over here, you can see the material attached to Remy model. And for each material, if I click on this and go to the inspector view again and click on the material, you see that the rendering mode is transparent. It should not be transparent, but it should be opaque. So for every element of Remy model, we're going to check whether the material is transparent, and if it is, we're going to change it to opaque. So and you'll see as I change every bit to opaque, he'll look well, less transparent. So his hair, I think, is going to be transparent as well. And top is transparent. And I think we're done. Okay, so after switching everything to transparent, now Remy looks fine. The last thing we need to change is that if you go back to, if you click again on the Remy model in the 3D model folder, and you, in the inspector, you click on rig, sorry. The thing is, for some models, some bones in the rig is not rigged. But for instance, when you use different animations, they might have different bones in them. And we need to, as a result, sometimes when you use an animation that was not exactly for your type of rig, for your model, sometimes it looks a little weird. The animations may be a little strange. So we need to just check a few things to make sure if some bone is not attached, we would just attach it so it won't look weird. So in the rig part, just go to configure. We're going to save the changes that we have made. Just go to configure and you see that this view appears. And for instance, in the body of our model, everything is just linked. All the bones are just linked just fine. But if we go to the head tab, we see that one is missing here. So the jawbone is missing here. And what we're going to do is just add, which is going to, in some cases, this might affect how Remy talks and how he moves his face. So what we're going to do is just drag and drop, go back to the hierarchy view over here, and if we scroll down, go to this object, head, which is called head top underscore end, and we're just going to drag and drop this over here. And then we're going to click apply, and then inspector view, and then done. So all the changes that we needed to make to the Remy 3D model to make sure it looks fine, all those changes are done. So now we're going to import the lip sync plugin. To import the lip sync plugin, what you needed to do is go to our tutorial web page, So go to our tutorial webpage, which is also linked in the slide. So if you follow this link, you'll see the tutorial webpage, and here you see the Rogo Digital Lip Sync. Just go ahead and download this package. So I'm going to download the Lip Sync Lite, not in the 3D models folder, but in my assets folder. Okay, so right now in the assets folder, if you download the Lip Sync Lite in the assets folder, you see it over there. If you download it anywhere in any of the other folders, go ahead and find where the Lip Sync Lite is, and then we're going to double click on the Lip Sync Lite asset, and a window will appear. A window will appear that you can see in the slides. A window will appear, import Unity package. So just click on import. And after you have imported that Unity package, you see a folder appearing called Rogo Digital. So just double click on that folder, and inside that folder there is another Lip Sync Lite package. Just double click on that package, and then you should see another pop-up saying import Unity package. Just go ahead and click import again. So for the next bit, now that we have our 3D model, what we're going to do is work on adding speech capabilities, and then later on facial expressions to our model. So for Remy to speak, what we did right now is we used a few pre-recorded audio files, and we're going to use those files in this tutorial as well. If you want to pre-record your files later on, what you need to do, there are a number of approaches. One possible approach is to use a text-to-speech interface. So we are using the text-to-speech interface in this website. You just need to put in your text and choose basically a type of voice over here. And then to record this audio, what we're doing is we're using the Audacity application, and we need to change a few settings, as you can see in the red boundaries, to make sure Audacity is recording from our computer. And then when we're saving the files, saving the recordings, make sure it's in the WAV format. And then since we want to use the Lip Sync Lite to control Remy's lip movements, what we need to do is first of all add the Lip Sync Lite script component to Remy model. So what we're going to do here is in the inspector view, go ahead and if you type in lip sync lip sync Lite will appear, and then we need to make a few changes to this script and link a few things over here. So first thing is that for inside blend system, we're going to choose the shape blend system, and then afterward, so we need to since it's going to use the blend shapes of this model, we need to link where those blend shapes are. So if you go back to the hierarchy view here and click on the Remy model, you see that if you open the Remy model, there's a game object called body, and inside this game object there is in the skin mesh renderer component, there are all the blend shapes for the Remy model. So and by that, for instance, if I want to this blink left, as you can see, Remy's left eye is closed now. So we need to link this blend shape to the lip sync component. So what I'm going to do is just drag and drop body over here, and drag it and drop it over here. And afterward, I'm just press continue. And when I press continue, it'll bring a list of phonemes for me, but I need to link these phonemes to actual movement. So what I'm going to do over here is click on this, click on presets. It already has some presets, and you can create your own presets, but we're just going to use create your own, but we're just going to use the standard preset over here. And as you can see, if you look at so whichever ones I click on, you see how the lip movement is going to be and how it's going to affect the blend shapes. Afterward, because we want Remy to talk, we need to add an audio source to the Remy model. So what I'm going to do is inside REMI model, I'm just going to add component and type in audio source. Inside the audio source component, make sure that play on awake is not checked. And what I'm going to do is drag and drop this audio source component inside, drag it and drop it inside the audio source over here. Okay, so now whenever we, in the future, when we add an audio clip, REMI, the source of it is going to be REMI. So for the next bit, we're going to use the lip sync plugin to be able to create lip movements based on the preset based on the standard preset that we initialize for the different audio files that we have pre-recorded. So what we're going to do is in the window tab, you should see a Robot Digital tab here, and then go to Lip Sync Lite and click on Open Clip Editor. If you're following along on Unity, a window should pop up, and I'm just gonna that says that has a tabs of lip sync and extensions. So what I'm going to do is just drag and drop the lip sync tab and drop it next to game view, and you can close the extensions tab. So we already have our audio files over here. So being able to open one of the pre-recorded audio files, you can either just go and click on File and Open, or you can open a file over here. When you do that, as you can see in the screenshot, a window will appear saying Select Audio Clip. Just to show how things work, we're going to work with the example of Hello 1, which is our shortest audio file. So one difference that Lip Sync Lite and Lip Sync Pro has is that in Lip Sync Lite, when I want to add the lip movements and the phonemes, I have to do everything manually myself. So I have to, now that I have the audio file hello, if I want to add the different lip movements for this audio file, I have to right click here and add the different markers myself. But Lip Sync Pro has this functionality that it generates based on your audio file. It generates the phonemes itself, and then when you look at the results, when you look at the end results of the lip movements, if you think something doesn't look good, you can go on and edit, but you don't have to put each and every phoneme yourself. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and add the different phonemes. So he starts pronouncing the H over here. I'm just gonna right click, add marker here, and choose H. This process, I'm just adding things quickly, but then you have to preview it and make sure it looks relatively okay. So E over here, let's just add it and see later. Hello. And okay, so in order to be able to preview it, actually, there's this option over here if you real-time preview, and I can choose a REMI model, and if I press play, hello, you see that Remi's lips, you see the Remi's lip movements over there. Hello. And for a text like this, which is very short, it's easy to put the phonemes yourself, but for longer texts, it'll be a little more difficult. And so to save this one, we're just going to go and click on Save As. When you click Save As, a window will appear so you can choose the folder. We're just going to save it in the audio files folder. So just go ahead and save it in the audio files folder. There is already a Hello 1 asset, so you can save it under a different name, or you can just write on the Hello 1 asset again. Okay, so now we have created one speech asset for the Hello audio file. We're going to use the pre-created assets for the other two audio files. And through scripts, we're going to create basically functions to trigger those audio files whenever we want them. So in order to get the baseline scripts, basically, go to the tutorial page again. And if you click on this, download the scripts files. Okay, so after you've downloaded the scripts, what I've done is that I created a scripts folder inside the assets folder in Unity, and then moved the 4 scripts over here. So Blink VH, IK Control, VH Expression, and VH Speech. So first thing we're going to work on is the VH Speech script. So just go ahead and open it. You should see basically an empty script over here. And then a few things. So you can see over here that we have the Rogo Digital Library added. So a few things that we're going to define is that we're going to use the lip sync object. Let's call it ls. And then we're also going to use lip sync data. We're going to create an array, and this lip sync data is basically going to be our audio files that we basically the speech assets that we have created. So first of all, since the ls object is a private object, we want to make sure the lip sync data is a public object. Since the ls object is private, we want our code to be able to find it. And so this script is attached to Remy. So it should go to the Remy game object and then get component. So get the lip sync component basically. That is under Remy. Okay. In case it does not find, just in case it doesn't find the ls object, we are going to look for it again in the first update. Okay, so now that we have our ls object, which is linked to the lip sync light script, what we are going to do is create a few functions that are going to trigger playing the different speech assets that we created. So I'm going to create, for instance, the public void. It's going to say hello. The ls object basically has a few methods that we can use. One of them is, for instance, play. And then I can link, through this play method, I can call the different audio files that I want. So if my hello, for instance, is the first audio file that I'm going to link, I'm going to call ls audio the first element in my array, and I'm going to do the same thing for the other speech assets that we have. So for instance, for the how are you, I'm going to link the how are you to the second element in my data array, and then link the introduction to the third element. So now that we have created these functions, what we're going to do is create UI elements that are going to, by using those UI elements, it can be, for instance, a button. By clicking that button, it will trigger this function, and then whichever speech asset we chose, Remy will play that and speak that speech asset basically. Okay, so now that we have our different functions for triggering the speech assets, what we need to do is, first of all, link the script to the Remy model. So what we're going to do is, inside Unity, go in the scene hierarchy, click on Remy object, and then in the inspector view, click on add component. And if you type in VH speech, just add the VH speech script. And inside the VH speech, if you remember, the ls audio, the lip sync data was a public variable. So right now the size of the array is 0, but we have three speech assets. So we are going to, first of all, link those 3 speech assets. And then whenever we trigger those functions, these speech assets will be played. So the first one was hello1, or if you saved it under a different name, which probably is hello2 or any other name, just add that one. The second one was how are you, and the third one is the introduction. Okay, so now that we added all the speech assets, what we're going to do is create the UI elements that are going to trigger the speech functions. So to do that, first of all, in the scene hierarchy, we're going to right click, and under UI, we're going to choose canvas. So after we have our canvas, you can see this white boundary over here. After we have our canvas, under canvas, for instance, we are going to use a button that is going to trigger saying hello or saying how are you. So again, go under UI and then choose button over here. It's going to create a button. We're going to call this say hello. It doesn't matter what you call it. And inside this say hello button, there's a text. So you see this button on Remy's chest. Let's move the button slightly to the left. Let's move this over here. Okay. And in the text, we can just say change the text to say hello. And now this button, if it doesn't really do anything, you can't really press it. To be able for the button to do something, you have to link it to the different functions you created inside whatever script you want. So if you go to the inspector view, when you click on the parent object of the button, say hello, if you go to the inspector view over here under on click, what we can do is, first of all, if we want to say on click do something. So I'm going to add the game object that has my script, which is Remy, and then inside Remy, I'm going to look into the different scripts that are attached to Remy, and then call. So these are the different scripts or different components that are attached to Remy, and then I want to call a specific function inside VH speech. So I want to call say hello. So now if we check to see if our button works, if I press this right now,
hello,
it triggers the saying hello function. One quick thing that we need to do is sometimes when we're importing different speech assets, for instance, we have created our own hello1 speech asset, but we have already, for instance, a how are you speech asset. I can open, for instance, the how are you speech asset over here. Sometimes in importing, as you can see, the phonemes are there, but the audio file is not there. So a quick thing that we can do is, now the phonemes are there, I'm just going to open the appropriate audio for those phonemes. So, and then save this file again, just to make sure, as you can see now here in the inspector view, now the speech asset file also has audio. I'm going to do the same really quickly for, so I want a new file. I'm going to do the same for the intro as well, and then link it back to the audio and save it again. Okay. So I went ahead and created new UI elements for a different speech, for the other speech assets that we had, how are you and intro, and the procedure is exactly the same. The only thing that is different is that, for instance, for the intro button under on click, we need to link the new function. So the new function that's going to trigger the introduce speech asset is the introduce function. So if I play this and click on intro.
My name is Remy. I will help with the tutorial today.
Yeah, he's gonna help with the tutorial today, and then we are pretty much done with the speech part of the tutorial. So what we're going to do next is going to control Remy's facial expressions, and we're going to use Remy's blend shapes to do that. So in the scene hierarchy here, under Remy game object, if you click on body, you'll see under skin mesh renderer, you see blend shapes over here. So these are basically all the blend shapes that Remy's model have. And now that I'm zoomed on Remy, I can, for instance, cheek puff left. I can make his left cheek puff. Basically, you can play around with everything over here. But what we're going to show are just two examples. One of them is to make Remy smile and then transition back to neutral facial expression. And the other one is that we're going to show using a different UI element, a slider, how to make Remy frown and then go back to neutral facial expression. So a few things over here is that this is basically an array of Remy's blend shapes. So when we're going to change these elements inside our script, we need to know which element in the array, which index in the array these are. So for instance, if I want to make Remy smile, I already have counted. So I know that smile left and smile right are indices number 39 and 40. So we need to know these indices and change those specific indices inside our code. So let's just go ahead and open the VH expression script. So now in the VH expression script, we need to add a few things to be able to control the different elements of the blend shape under skin mesh renderer. So first thing we need to do is we need to have access to this game object called body. So I'm gonna define a game object, I'm gonna call it body, and then I want a skin mesh renderer object, I'm gonna call it SMR, and then I have to define over here what SMR is, which is a component under the body game object. So skinned, okay. And just in case over here, we're just going to say if SMR was not there, it's going to look for it again. And now we need to have access to the different elements of the blend shape. So for instance, for smiling, the blend shapes are elements number 39 and number 40. And we need to, instead of like a regular function call, we need to use coroutines because we want the smile to happen. We want the smile to happen outside of each frame and to be gradual. That's why we need to use a coroutine. And what I'm going to do is make the values of each of these elements, element number 39, smile left, and 40, to happen gradually in this to basically change gradually inside this for loop. So if I define a counter over here, and another thing I'm going to do is that I can hard code a maximum value. So for I to reach that maximum value, one other thing we can do is create a public integer, for instance. Let's call it smile limit. And then we can set this value smile limit to any value. Let's set it to 80. And then the good thing about having it as a public value over here is that later on when we're editing things, we can just change this value inside the inspector. So I'm going to say if I is less than equal to smile limit, just increase it. I need to change elements 39 and 40. The skin mesh render object now can call two methods. One of them, the method is set blend shape weight. This method takes two inputs. One of them is the index of the blend shape that we're going to change. So first one is 39, and one of them the value that blend shape is going to get. So it's going to be the I value. So for every iteration, it's going to basically be increased by 1. And we want to do the same thing for the left side, so his smile is not for the right side. So his smile is not crooked. Okay. So now that we have the two smile, if we want him not to smile all the time, we can do the same thing basically, but do it the other way around. So the other way around is he's smiling and we want to set it back to neutral. So if it's going the other way around, that means he is smiling. So his basically current value is the maximum value that we had set, and we want this to go back to 0, to neutral. So we want to reduce this counter by 1 every time, and then we want this counter, as you can see here, to affect blend shapes number 39 and blend shapes number 40. One thing I have over here is a smile routine. So you can create different, you can use these coroutines separately, and so create UI elements to control these elements separately. What I'm going to do here is that Remy is going to smile, and then from smile transition back to neutral. So what I'm going to do over here is create basically a transition. So this line of code, what this does is that it waits for a number of seconds that I'm going to define myself. And then, so basically says, after 2 seconds, call this coroutine, call the toSmile coroutine. And after a few seconds, go ahead and transition back to neutral. Okay. One thing that I have over here, so I have this coroutine over here that does the transition for me. I could have done it separately, as I mentioned, but one thing that we need to do is that if I want to have a UI element that is going to trigger the smile routine, UI elements cannot control coroutines. So I need to create this function over here. So I just uncommented this. This function, smile function, is basically going to call the smile routine coroutine. So what I'm going to do, now that I have my smile function, which does the transitions between smiling and going back to neutral, inside Unity, one thing I can do is that I can add in my canvas another button over here. And for instance, I'm going to call this toSmile. And I will slightly move this toSmile button over there and link this toSmile button to the function that we just created, which is, so same as before, same as all the other UI elements. I'm going to first of all link it to the object that has that script. Right now, Remy only has VH speech script. So first of all, we need to add the VH expression script that we just worked on. And then inside the VH script, a VH expression script, you see that the body, it hasn't been attached to this script yet. So first of all, we're going to, in the scene hierarchy over here, we're going to drag this body game object and drop it over here in the inspector view. And now, if we go back to our toSmile button game object, now if you link Remy to this game object, you can see under functions, you can see the VH expression script, and then you can choose the smile function over here. So if we play this right now, let's zoom in on Remy a little bit. You see that after a few seconds, Remy smiles, and then a few seconds later, his facial expression is changed back to neutral. To test other UI elements, one thing we can do is, for instance, as I quickly mentioned before, is for instance make Remy frown using a slider. So basically linking a slider to the minimum and maximum levels of Remy's frown levels, Remy's frown blend shapes. So to do that, first of all, under canvas over here, we're gonna, under UI elements, we're gonna choose a slider. And what we want to do is, for instance, for this example, we want to be able to access the elements inside the slider component through script. So if we move back to our VH expression script over here, you see that I'm using the Unity Engine UI library. So this line has to be there for you to be able to access the different components in this slider. So I'm just going to quickly uncomment a few things. So this public slider game object needs to be, I'm just going to call it found slider. We are later on going to link the slider, the game object slider that we created over here to this slider object. And then, as you can see, so when I created this found slider, now found slider, if it's linked to this slider object, that means now I can control, then I can basically write to the different values, the minimum and max values over here. When this script is, when I play the game and this script is running. And the other things I want to uncomment over here is that I already counted, so the frown blend shapes on Remy's face are elements number 13 and 14, so frown left and frown right. So I'm just going to uncomment that. And right now we are, since we're controlling it with a slider and we're controlling the values, it's not inside a coroutine, but technically if you wanted to on its own, without you controlling the slider level, if you wanted to on its own transition between values gradually, then this also needs to be inside a coroutine. So over here, first of all, we have the slider. Let's move back in the Unity scene. We need to move the slider slightly to the left. So let's move this down here. So this is our found slider. Let's move the camera a little. It's okay, I need to make this slightly bigger. And let's move the camera forward a little. Okay. And now I need to link this slider object to, as you see, it's empty, to the VH expression. So I'm just going to drag and drop it over here. And now whatever line of code I added in the inside the VH expression script, now this script is going to activate and change the values, the minimum maximum values. So if you take a look over here, in the slider element, right now the min value and the max value are set to 0 and 1. But when I play this, based on what I hard-coded already in the script, so these are hard-coded values, this is going to change from 0 to 100. And then now, one other thing I need to do is same as all the other UI elements. I need to link what's going to happen under on value change. So I need to link on value change to this function to frown over here. So same as all the other UI elements that we worked on, the game object that has this script is Remy, and then I'm going to go to VH expression and call the to frown function. So now if I play this and change the slider, you see that Remy gradually is frowning. Let's zoom in his face. You see that Remy's not happy at the moment, and he moves back to neutral. So the final bits about Remy's expressions is that if we want Remy to have some sort of like a more natural behavior, Remy has to have some like human-like expressions, such as he should be able to blink his eye every once in a while so he doesn't have like a dead stare, And depending on the interaction you're designing with your virtual human, for instance, you might want Remy to pay attention at a certain object, which can be the user in your interaction, which is in our case, in the case of the Unity program, is basically the camera. I'm going to quickly go over these two scripts that are controlling these behaviors right now. So if you go to the scripts folder and open the Blink VH, I will go through the different coroutines that we have that controls Remy's blinking every once in a while. So starting with the Blink VH script, some of the things are very similar to our VH expression script. So since we need to, for blinking, we need to access this blink left and blink right blend shapes. So same as before, we need to define in some way a body game object, and then we need to access the skin mesh renderer component of that body game object. And so that's how in the start function I define what SMR is. So now it knows that with SMR, it can access any of these values. The main way of thinking about how it's going to blink, it can be different. So there are, I guess, infinite number of ways for you to program how to make Remy blink every once in a while. The way we have it here is that isOpen is a boolean. So if Remy's eyes are open, because most of the time our eyes are open and then we blink every once in a while. So if Remy's eyes are open, then we start a timer, and then for our timer, we have a max value. So for instance, every 5 seconds he can blink. So open limit is basically the limit of time that his eyes are open. So for instance, right now I have hard-coded this value to be 5 over here. So when the timer, after 5 seconds, when the timer reaches 5, then the isOpen boolean turns to false. That means that after 5 seconds, his eyes are not going to be open anymore. So if the isOpen value is false, then it should start blinking at this point. And that's the start coroutine that is doing the blinking. Again, the reason that it's going to be inside a coroutine is that we want this to happen gradually and not inside our update is for every frame. So what the blink eye coroutine is doing, you can see it over here. The blink eye coroutine is assuming that your eyes was open and then the timer ran out and now you need to blink, let's say, once. So the assumption is that your eyes are already open. So since your eyes are already open, it's going to start a close your eyes coroutine, close slowly coroutine, which I'm going to explain in a little bit, a little later. And then it's going to wait for a short amount of time. The short close limb is basically the short amount of time that is going to keep Remy's eyes closed, which for now I have hard-coded as 0.5, sorry. I've hard-coded as this value. It's going to wait for this short amount of time, and then it's going to call the coroutine of opening Remy's eyes slowly. One thing that we had over here is that, as you can see, I had this open limb inside my update function. I had this open limb hard-coded at 5, so it starts at 5. The initial value started at 5, but you see in this coroutine, I'm changing the value of open limb to be somewhere between 4 seconds and 8 seconds. Because as humans, we don't, every 5, we don't blink like every n seconds. We kind of like at some random second, we blink a lot, but at every random second, we blink. That's why this makes it a little more natural, because it's not an exact amount of time. So every time the limit, the limit that timer needs to reach to changes basically inside the blink eye coroutine. So the blink eye coroutine is very simple. Since his eyes were open, now it's going to close it. The eyes are going to stay closed for a short amount of time, and then it's going to call the open your eyes coroutine. So let's go and look inside these two close slowly and open slowly coroutines. Close slowly and open slowly coroutines are very similar to the two smile and two neutral coroutines that we had for function that we wanted Remy to smile over a number of seconds. So open slowly is assuming that Remy's eyes are already closed. So they are set to a value, which we have hard coded. So they are set to a value, let's say the maximum value is 100, or we have in this script is 200. No, but it's not going to make a difference, 200 or 100. It goes to the max. So this is the hard-coded value. And then since it's at this value, until it reaches 0 inside this for loop, it's going to gradually change the set basically new values for blend shapes elements number 0 and blend shape element number 1. And the opposite is going to happen for close slowly. So we're assuming that Remy's eyes are open. If Remy's eyes are open, that means that the blink left and the blink right elements are set to 0. And now inside our for loop, basically these values are going to gradually increase by 50 to reach their maximum value. And when we add the script, when we add the blink v8 script, because we want this to happen all the time, so we don't really need a UI element to control blinking. So the thing that we need to do is, if we look at Remy right now for 4 to 8 seconds, if we look at Remy right now, Remy is staring at us the whole time. We're staring at the camera. So the thing that we need to do is we need to add the blink v8 script, and we also need to link this body game object over here. So if you play this again, Remy should start blinking. As you see, Remy is blinking every once in a while, basically. The last bit that we're going to go through now is to make the interaction in a way that Remy, for instance, can pay attention to a certain object or a certain person, depending on the scenario that your interaction is looking at. So here, what we're going to do is make Remy look at the camera. And a thing that we need to pay attention to is that in many scenarios, your 3D models are not going to be static or be in T-pose. So they will be actually doing things and having animations. And when the models have animations, we need to make sure that the specific functionalities that we're adding on, such as looking at a certain point, is overriding those animations or happening at the same time with those animations, if that makes sense. So what we need to do here is basically go through the steps of making sure that animations and paying attention to certain objects, looking at certain objects happen at the same time. To do that, I'm going to create an animator. I just want to briefly say that Austin in the next parts of the tutorial will go into more detail about animations and animators. So what I'm going to create here is going to be the dummy animator, basically. So if you go to the Remy, if you click on Remy game object, and in the inspector view, there is this component animator. And then I'm going to add this animator controller, the dummy controller that I created. I'm going to drag and drop it over here. And if I double click on it, the animator view will open up, which is very empty. And over here under layers, you see this tab called base layers. So if I create on this, and it says, as you can see over here, so this is for changing the layer settings. So if I click on this, you wouldn't be able to see it on my screen view, but a small window will appear, and this window is basically telling us whether while an animation is happening, we are allowing inverse kinematics to happen as well. So there is a boolean that I need to check, basically, to say let inverse kinematics override my animations. And now on my screen you can see that a tiny IK appeared next to that setting icon. So now that I allowed inverse kinematics to override my animations, we're going to go ahead and open the IK control script from the scripts folder. And as you can see over here, I'm just going to briefly go through the elements of the script. So the animator of your humanoid character needs to be linked over here. And then the objects that you want your character to be looking at also need to be linked over here. So we have defined the transform for a look object, and here in the start, we actually say that we want this look object to be our main camera over here. This is our main camera over here in our scene. And what's going to happen is that if our game object has an animator, and if we have set the IK control to be active, if we have set IK to be active, if we have defined an object, what this for loop does is that it gradually adds weight to the object that our virtual human is going to look at, and then changes our human's attention, basically set look at position, changes it towards that the position of that object. So this is if we have an object set, but then if we don't have an object set, then it's going to change the weight of looking at that object to 0, basically, over here. Okay, so if you go back to Unity right now, and under the Remy model, first thing we need to do is we need to add the IK control. So we click on Add Component and type in IK control, and then we add the script. And before we run the program, for the look object, we want Remy to look at the camera. So we're going to drag and drop the main camera as transform, basically, to be the look object. And then, so IK active right now is false. And if we press play, first, after a bit, you see that Remy moves to this weird pose. Don't worry about this right now, because as I said earlier, we were just using a dummy animator controller, and this dummy animator controller doesn't have any animations inside it, as you can see over here. So that's why Remy looks kind of strange right now, but Austin will explain more about adding animations. So this part is not important at the moment, but as you see, Remy is not really, if I move the camera slightly down, Remy is not really looking at the camera, he's just looking forward. But if we set if in the IK control core code, if I check IK active, you notice that now Remy kind of follows the camera slightly. So if I move the camera up, move the camera down, he looks up, now he's looking down. So this is pretty much it for the facial expressions and speech part of the tutorial. Next, Austin will go into detail about gestures and locomotion. And thank you so much for following along this part of the tutorial.